I never planned to become the kind of person who carries silence like a weapon. But life has a way of shaping you into exactly what you need to be. The night everything shifted, the house felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I walked through the dim hallway without switching on the light, because darkness felt easier to understand than the truth waiting for me. I was halfway to my room when I saw my sister sitting on the edge of her bed, her shoulders trembling even though she wasn't crying. She looked up at me for only a moment, and in that single glance, I knew something inside her had been taken, something she could not find the courage to speak about. She didn't tell me what happened, and I didn't ask, because the pain in her eyes was loud enough to break the world. Before the story begins, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. That night, long after she fell asleep, I sat by the window and watched the lights of our neighborhood flicker like they were trapped between truth and lies. People around us trusted him. They respected him. Some even admired him. But admiration is easy when you don't know the shadows behind someone's smile. I didn't know the full story yet, but I knew enough. My sister was hurting, and the reason behind her pain was someone everyone considered untouchable. I could have tried to forget, like she begged me to, but her silence didn't ask me to drop the matter. Her silence asked me to carry it. For days, I watched everything more closely. His routine, his behavior, his sudden stiffness whenever the truth got too close. Monsters don't always hide in darkness. Sometimes they hide in plain sight, pretending to be the light everyone depends on. He walked with confidence, but his eyes told a different story, one of a man terrified of being exposed. And I realized something important. Revenge doesn't start with anger. It starts with observation, with quiet thinking, with the moment you understand that the world won't save you unless you save yourself. Every night I wrote down small details, where he went, who he talked to, what he avoided, what made him nervous. Piece by piece, a pattern began to form. I discovered things I wasn't supposed to know. Deals that looked clean but smelled rotten. Promises he made that he never intended to keep. People he treated kindly in public, but pushed aside when no one was watching. And as each truth surfaced, my purpose became clearer. If my sister couldn't fight for herself, then I would fight for her in a way that didn't require her to relive the pain. The first step wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't confront him or shout or demand answers. I simply let the truth breathe. I sent a few anonymous messages to the right people. Nothing dangerous, nothing illegal, just the kind of information that forces people to look at someone twice. Sometimes the smallest whispers travel faster than the loudest screams. And within days, doubt began creeping around him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. He tried to smile through it, to pretend everything was normal, but guilt has a strange way of tightening around a person's throat. One evening, he crossed paths with me near the gate. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He asked if I had noticed anything unusual happening lately. I told him I hadn't, keeping my voice calm, almost bored. He studied my face for a second longer than normal, as if trying to read something hidden beneath my expression. But he found nothing, because I wanted him to find nothing. Monsters underestimate quiet girls. They forget that the quietest ones often hear the most. That night, when I stood in front of the mirror, I realized I was no longer the girl who waited for justice to arrive from someplace outside. I was becoming someone else, someone who didn't react but planned, who didn't cry but observed, who didn't break but rebuilt herself stronger than before. I felt no fear, only certainty. And certainty is the most powerful emotion when you're stepping into darkness with a purpose. My goal wasn't just to expose him. My goal was to make him watch the truth collapse around him, slowly, painfully, the same way my sister had collapsed under the weight of what he did. Revenge isn't a storm that destroys everything at once. It's a quiet fire that burns through every lie until there is nothing left but ash. And I had only just lit the first spark. He didn't know it yet. He didn't even suspect it yet. But his world had already started breaking. And this was only the beginning. The days that followed felt strangely calm, as if the world had stepped aside to let me do what I needed to do. I moved through my routine quietly, blending into the background like a shadow no one bothers to look at. But while I seemed silent on the outside, my mind was constantly weaving threads together. Threads that would eventually form the net he could never escape from. People say revenge is fueled by rage, but mine was fueled by precision. Every step had to be calculated. Every move had to be invisible. and every truth had to land exactly where it hurt the most. I started by digging deeper into the parts of his life that only careless people leave unguarded. His social circle was full of people who admired him without ever questioning him. Yet admiration is the easiest mask to break because it shatters the moment doubt slips in. So I became the doubt. Anonymous emails, forwarded screenshots, hints wrapped inside innocent suggestions. I didn't have to lie. All I did was give people reasons to wonder. Humans fear uncertainty more than they fear danger. And soon enough, uncertainty began suffocating his reputation. The most interesting change was in his behavior. He grew restless, pacing more often, checking his phone with stiff fingers, glancing around as if shadows themselves were watching him. He spoke less, smiled less, and trusted no one. That was the beginning of his fall. His confidence wasn't fading, it was cracking. And cracks only grow deeper with time. One afternoon, I saw him arguing with someone over the phone, his voice tense, his patience slipping. I didn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. His world was slipping out of his hands, and I was the invisible force loosening his grip. I didn't feel joy watching him panic. I didn't feel triumphant. I simply felt focused, as if everything happening was just a necessary part of the unfinished story I was writing. My sister still didn't know what I was doing, and I intended to keep it that way. She was healing slowly, finding small moments of peace again, and I refused to let my mission drag her back into the darkness she fought to escape. So I carried the darkness myself, quietly, steadily, without ever letting it touch her again. The real turning point came when I found something I wasn't expecting: old files, hidden messages, and a list of people who once trusted him the way we did. These weren't victims. They were examples of how far he was willing to go to protect his mask. And buried between those files was a truth he never wanted anyone to see. A truth that could destroy him without me lifting another finger. Holding that information felt like holding the key to his downfall. And for the first time, I sensed fear, not from him, but from the world that had allowed him to roam freely for so long. But I didn't release that truth yet, because timing is everything, and his story needed to collapse exactly the way he built it, slowly, deceptively, and with consequences he never imagined. I spent the next week preparing the final phase of his unraveling. I knew that once I stepped into the stage, there would be no turning back. Revenge has a point of no return, and I had finally reached it. But instead of fear, I felt a strange calmness. The calmness of someone who already accepted the path ahead. I organized the evidence, saved every file in multiple places, and traced every connection to make sure nothing could be tracked back to me. I wasn't just exposing a man. I was exposing an entire history of manipulation and hidden truths. While I prepared in silence, he grew louder. His frustration bled into every corner of his life. He questioned friends, snapped at co-workers, and carried paranoia like a weight tied around his neck. He even started treating people around him with suspicion, as if everyone had become a potential threat. But he still didn't see me. Not even once. And perhaps that was the most ironic part. He never noticed the quiet girl who walked past him daily. He never considered that the person he underestimated most was the one dismantling him piece by piece. One evening, I watched him sitting in his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, staring at nothing. His face looked tired, almost defeated, as if the walls he built so confidently were starting to suffocate him. But I didn't feel any satisfaction. Revenge wasn't about feeling powerful. It was about restoring balance, putting truth where lies once lived, giving silence a voice where fear had stolen it. And I knew I was almost there. The next morning, I began releasing the first set of real evidence. Not everything, just enough to start the fire. I sent documents anonymously through trusted channels, people who wouldn't ignore something this serious. And once the truth left my hands, it spread faster than rumors ever could. Questions turned into investigations. Conversations behind closed doors turned into meetings. His phone rang nonstop. His world was officially under threat. When I passed by him later that day, his eyes looked different. Not just worried, but cornered. Like a man who finally realized something was hunting him. He didn't know who or why, but he knew the attack wasn't random. And for the first time, I saw a flash of fear buried deep inside him. Fear not of people, but of consequences. Still, this wasn't the end. This was only the fire catching its first breath. I had one final piece of truth left, the piece that would collapse everything in one blow. But I wouldn't release it just yet. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is letting someone feel the weight of their downfall before it even lands. The tension in the air grew heavier each day. He stopped pretending everything was normal and instead moved like a man living inside a shrinking cage. Everywhere he went, whispers followed him. The world that once admired him now watched him with suspicion, trying to understand whether the rumors were true. And that uncertainty broke him more than the truth ever could. I continued observing him from the background, careful not to draw attention. I saw him pacing outside buildings, making desperate phone calls, trying to piece together a puzzle he didn't know the edges of. He kept searching for the source of the storm, unaware that the eye of it was standing quietly only a few steps away. But I didn't enjoy his suffering. I only wanted him to understand the pain he caused. Not through violence, not through fear, but through consequences. My sister slowly grew lighter. She smiled more often, spent more time outside her room, and even laughed softly at things she once ignored. Watching her heal reminded me why I started all this in the first place. This wasn't about revenge for my satisfaction. It was about reclaiming the peace he tried to steal from her. And as she rebuilt herself, I continued tearing apart the life of the person who broke her spirit. One afternoon, I caught him staring at a message on his phone, his hands trembling ever so slightly. He looked around, almost paranoid, as if he expected someone to appear and accuse him. His once confident walk was replaced with hurried steps, and his voice had lost its steadiness. Every lie he built was now pressing down on him, demanding answers he didn't have. And still, I remained invisible, the silent force guiding the destruction. Finally, I knew it was time. The last piece of evidence, the part he never wanted the world to see, was ready to be released. I didn't rush. I waited for the right moment, the moment when the pressure around him had reached its breaking point, the moment when the truth wouldn't just expose him, it would collapse everything he depended on. And when the moment arrived, I pressed send. Just one click, just one truth, and his entire world fell. The chaos that followed was almost immediate. Phones rang, doors slammed, messages spread like wildfire. The truth wasn't just out, it was undeniable. Conversations that once praised him turned into discussions filled with shock, disappointment, and anger. People he trusted stepped away from him. Doors that once opened wide for him now shut in his face. And the image he worked so hard to protect shattered in an instant. He disappeared for a while, hiding behind excuses and temporary escapes. But running doesn't undo the truth. It only delays the moment you're forced to face it. When he eventually returned, the confidence in his eyes was gone. He walked with uncertainty, spoke with hesitation, and carried the weight of everything he had tried to bury. But this wasn't about humiliating him. It was about accountability, something he never expected to face. As for me, I didn't stand in front of him to claim victory. I didn't reveal myself. I didn't need to. Revenge doesn't always require the world to know who delivered it. Sometimes the most powerful justice is silent, anonymous, and unseen. I watched from a distance as the truth completed the work I had started. He wasn't just exposed. He was forced to confront a reality he once denied. My sister never found out what I did for her. She didn't need to. She was healing without the weight of the past dragging her down. And that was enough for me. I didn't do this to be recognized. I did this to give her the peace she deserved. A peace he tried to take from her, but could never keep. In the end, I walked away quietly, blending back into the background like I had always been. The world moved on. People forgot. New stories replaced old ones. But somewhere in the middle of all that noise, the truth remained. And so did I. Not as a judge, not as a hero, but as someone who refused to stay silent when silence could no longer protect the people I loved. And that is how his world ended. Not with a scream, but with the quiet strength of someone he never saw coming.